"You're not my sister anymore. I'm cutting ties with you," my brother said with a sneering smile. It wasn't a shocking declaration. To our father, I wasn't related by blood, I was my mother's child from a previous relationship. Yet, he loved me as if I were his own, which made him very special to me. I felt a mix of anger and relief at Kevin's words. Angry that he wanted to monopolize everything our father left behind, but relieved by his declaration of cutting ties. "Fine by me," I said firmly. "In return, once you inherit, don't ever contact me again, like I'd ever do that. And don't expect a penny from me later," he retorted with smug confidence. My name is Nancy, a 29-year-old civil servant. My brother Kevin, 7 years younger at 22, had just graduated from university. He often boasted about his superior life compared to mine. "My company's way more prestigious than your rural city office," he'd say with a smirk. "Must be Dad's genes at work. After all, I've got the blood of a man who worked for a major corporation." It was always the same condescending tone. Although we shared the same mother, we had different fathers. Kevin was the biological son of our father and mother, while I was the daughter of my mother and her ex-husband. Despite being a stepchild, Dad never treated me differently. He loved me deeply, which I appreciated, especially since I barely remembered my biological father. He had abandoned us when I was very young. When Kevin was younger, he never mentioned our differing parentage, but that changed after our mother died in a car accident when Kevin was still in middle school. Unable to process his grief, he found a scapegoat, me. At her funeral, he shouted, "Why did Mom have to die? It would have been better if it were you. No one would care if the step-sibling were gone." Those words shattered something between us. Our father, whom I had never seen so furious, scolded Kevin harshly. I wanted to argue back, but I stayed silent. From that moment, our relationship only deteriorated. Kevin began to see me as an obstacle he had to surpass, whether academically, socially, or professionally, but his ambition often exceeded his abilities. He failed to get into his top choice schools for both high school and university, and while I had a steady full-time job, he was just a student with part-time gigs. Rather than focusing on other areas like sports or arts, he fixated on blood relations as his edge. He started mocking me for being a stepchild, claiming superiority as Dad's real child. At first, I assumed it was misplaced grief, but as he grew older, it became clear he genuinely believed it. "Kevin and Dad are the real family," he'd say. "Nancy's just an outsider. Being the real child gives me higher standing than her." I grew tired of his petty provocations. He'd instigate conflicts, lose by his own metrics, and then lash out in frustration. It was exhausting. Eventually, I stopped engaging with him entirely. When Kevin began commuting to university from home, I moved out into my own apartment. I coordinated visits with Dad to avoid running into Kevin. Years passed. Kevin graduated and secured a position at a well-regarded local company. Wanting to bury the hatchet, I bought him a tie as a graduation gift, but his attitude hadn't changed. "Of course, I landed a better job at a more prestigious company than your little city office," he said smugly. "It's all thanks to Dad's genes. Unlike you, I inherited the blood of someone who worked for a major corporation." It seemed the 4 years of university had done little to mature him. I decided against giving him the tie. Instead, I continued my life, living alone and commuting to work while Kevin stayed with our father. However, his lifestyle didn't last long. Less than a year later, Dad fell suddenly ill. There had been no warning signs. I had spoken to him on the phone the night before he passed away, completely unaware it would be our last conversation. His death came so abruptly that I didn't even have the chance to say goodbye. At the funeral, I served as the chief mourner. Thanks to Dad's meticulous preparations, everything, except for the inheritance, was handled smoothly. But I knew the inheritance would be a problem. With Kevin and me as the only living heirs, conflict seemed inevitable. While going through Dad's room, I found documents related to the inheritance. However, I suspected they wouldn't be followed to the letter. When Kevin showed up over 30 minutes late to our meeting, he didn't apologize. Instead, he launched straight into an outrageous demand. "The inheritance is mine. I'm the real child, so I'll take it all," he said with a smirk. "You, as a stepchild, are just an outsider. Isn't it greedy for an outsider to claim the inheritance?" He laughed, gloating about being the real child and monopolizing everything. I was so tired of dealing with him that I decided to put an end to it. "I won't take anything from Dad," I said firmly. "In return, you must promise never to contact me again. Not ever." "Are you stupid?" Kevin sneered. "Like I'd ever want to talk to you. Don't expect anything from me either. Just disappear." Disgusted, I stood up to leave. As I walked away, a bittersweet memory of Kevin as a sweet little boy flickered in my mind. The next day, I went to a law office to renounce my share of the inheritance. "Nancy, You mentioned you don't have inheritance rights because you're a stepchild, the lawyer said. Actually, Dad formally adopted me, I explained, so I do have rights, but I don't want anything. I've decided to renounce it all. The lawyer nodded and didn't press further, though Kevin didn't know it. Dad had legally made me his daughter. We might not have shared blood, but we were truly parent and child. Despite this, I was tired of the complications and wanted to free myself from the burdens of family conflict. A month later, the family court finalized my renunciation. I contacted Kevin to inform him. Hello, I said. The renunciation is complete. You'll handle everything now. Shut up, he shouted. I get it, you gave up the inheritance. Stop pretending to be a real sister and don't ever contact me again. He hung up before I could respond. I sighed, relieved yet knowing deep down that this wasn't the end of it. 3 months later, I started receiving a barrage of calls and emails from Kevin. Reluctantly, I answered one. You know what? I need to borrow some money, he said, his voice tired and desperate. Dad had debts, and I can't keep up with the payments. I even used his savings, but it's not enough. What? I asked, confused. Dad had loans, but his savings should have covered most of it. What's going on? Kevin snapped. Did you know about this? Did you push all the debt onto me on purpose? You're such a terrible person, no wonder, since you're just a stepchild. Before I could respond, he hung up again. His words stung, but they also left me baffled. I had tried to warn him about Dad's financial situation after the estate investigation, but he had blocked all communication. Now he was blaming me for the consequences of his ignorance. A few days later, another email from Kevin arrived, begging for money. When I finally responded, I couldn't hide my irritation. I'm not your sister, remember? I wrote. You should contact the mortgage lender or a lawyer instead of bothering me, an outsider. Kevin replied, what are you talking about? Don't sweat the small stuff. Besides, I'm treating you like a sister, even though you're just a stepchild. Be grateful for that. Come on, Nancy, just give me some money. His smug entitlement made my blood boil. I hung up abruptly and blocked Kevin's number. Thankfully, he didn't know where I lived, and I had taken care not to leave any clues about my home when visiting Dad's house. For added safety, I even got a new phone, assuming that would end the harassment. But I was wrong. Kevin found another way to reach me. He began showing up at the city office where I worked. Gone was the arrogance he'd once displayed, now he looked genuinely distressed, visiting me repeatedly during lunch breaks. It was clear he was sneaking away from his job. On days he didn't visit, he bombarded me with calls, disrupting my work. I explained the situation to my boss, and they moved me to an administrative position away from the public eye. However, Kevin started lingering past office hours, waiting for me to leave. One evening, as I walked to my car, I found him standing there. I dragged him to the parking lot. Stop it already, I said firmly. Don't cause trouble at my workplace. I told you to consult the loan institutions and the lawyer. His pretense of politeness vanished as he crossed his arms and glared at me. I did consult them, okay? Thanks to the group credit life insurance, I don't have to pay for the house anymore. The car loan was reduced to about $5,000, and I renegotiated the payments, but that's not the problem. Then what is the problem? I asked, confused. Dad didn't have any other debts. Kevin hesitated, his anger softening as he nervously glanced around. Finally, he confessed. Actually, Dad had quite a bit of savings. I spent it on things. I went over budget and had to borrow from a friend. Now I can't pay him back. He's accusing me of scamming him, and I can't borrow from anyone else. If I can't find money soon, I'll have to go to loan sharks. I sighed, my head aching as I pieced together the mess he'd created. Let me get this straight, I said. You've been borrowing money to repay debts, and now you're stuck? Yeah, Kevin admitted, his voice a mixture of shame and desperation. I think I'm blacklisted or something. I can't borrow anymore. If you pay, it'll all be over. He extended his hand toward me. So, Nancy, just give me $888,000. I slapped his hand away. Absolutely not, I said firmly. This is entirely your fault, for overspending, borrowing recklessly, and resorting to loan sharks. Kevin's expression darkened, and he sneered. Why can't you help me? Is it because we're only half-siblings? Stepchildren really are the worst, so selfish and unpleasant. I had heard enough. I got into my car and started the engine. Kevin tried to cling to me, but I shoved his hand away. You promised never to contact me again in exchange for the inheritance, I reminded him. You broke that promise, begged for money, and insulted me. I don't owe you a single penny. If you come near me again, I'll call the police. Ignoring his shouts of Nancy, I drove away, leaving him in the parking lot. Kevin didn't stop. He continued coming to City Hall, lingering until closing time and harassing staff with calls. Although he wasn't causing public disturbances, his behavior made him a known nuisance. When I learned he'd been asking about my severance pay after discovering I'd quit, I knew it was time to take action. What Kevin didn't realize was that I hadn't actually left the city office, I had requested a transfer. The city where I worked had recently merged several towns, and the old town hall still operated as a branch office. I explained my situation to the personnel department, and they transferred me to a branch in the mountains, far from Kevin's reach. Kevin eventually defaulted on his debts, leading to wage garnishment. Forced to live modestly, he was a shadow of the arrogant brother who once bragged about his superiority. As for me, I found solace in my new role. The mountain branch was short-staffed, and the work, though challenging, felt more meaningful. With fewer residents, I grew closer to the community and felt truly valued. When I told people I had no family left, they treated me with kindness and warmth. Though the pain of losing both my mother and father lingered, I felt relieved to be free from the complications of being labeled a stepchild or a legitimate child. For the first time in years, I felt at peace,